Hi guys, yes, I can do this. I have some exciting news. The woman I was trying to contact earlier last week has responded to my messages. So the email I sent to the company that she works for apparently worked. It did the trick. And, that was an interesting moment right there. I was really, on the road with my husband last Saturday, like I mentioned earlier, and we were trying, just to get the work done and all that. And I was going to do a bit of shopping for lunch while he went to his client, and in the meantime, I just stood outside on the street and I went online for a tiny bit to see whether there was anything going on. And lo and behold, there comes a message out of the past, or it is out of the present, of course, because she sent it like an hour before that. And she was really kind, and there was a bit of a reserve and a bit of almost a sense of fright there, I think, that she was really surprised that I had got hold of her and that I'd wanted to contact her and her mother. Her mother, who took care of me in the foster home where I lived for a year when I was 6 years old. And there we are. So you can see how upset and excited I was, right? I was standing there in the middle of some godforsaken village in another part of the country, alone, and I was going all over the place. It was so very weird. So very weird to be reading her message. And there she was, she's right there. And they were really surprised and they were pleased to hear from me. And they wonder, of course, why it had to take so long. And it has been fizzing around my brain, the whole thing. We've had several messages between us going back and forth during the weekend. And I have confirmed their street address, so I have sent them a collection of photographs mainly of myself growing up. I made a booklet for, I suppose you should call her my foster mum, even though she hasn't had that name ever, certainly not in my life, because of the way things went, right? I wasn't capable of seeing things any differently than how my mother presented it. And to my mother, everything was consumed in the battle with my father. It was so strange, really. It made no sense the way those two were just, they were fighting a war, really, and right through the middle of me. And I had no agency, no say in the matter, none at all. And the more I think about it and the more I, have to put things in a perspective one way or another, it's quite hard and it's a lot of work and it's exhausting. So there you go. But I have sent the collection of photographs and I'm going to show you something I made maybe a year ago or so, because I thought that to show you the booklet that I made for my foster mum, that wouldn't be fair. That's meant for her eyes only, of course. So this one is a bit similar. It's the same technique, really. You know how it is when you write poetry and stuff, or you write things down that are important to you in a special way, and you have also lots of drawings and lots of little scraps and bits, and they don't have really any place to stay, especially with poetry. I felt that a couple of years ago. I felt that it was really, it annoyed me a great deal that I had always just scraps and jottings and little, pieces of paper lying around the house all over, or maybe they were collected together in a box or something, but never anything pretty done with them, right? And then I read again, or I read and remembered that Emily Dickinson, you know, of old American fame, used to bind her own booklets with a thread, just a couple of pages really, and sewn through with solid tough thread, and then you have a booklet. Okay, so I developed on that idea, and I use beads to put at the backs of them. There you go. Bits of shell and whatever I get these from a shop. Okay, I don't make any of these myself. Generally, they have lots of great stuff to use, and I use all sorts of thread and, you know, interesting looking bits and pieces. And then this is what it looks like on the inside. This is another one that I made for myself with, at some point, photographs of me and my mum. There's my mum with me as a baby, and you know, there's a bit of all sorts of typical emotions that are typical for us, right? Look here, I have that's me right there at the bottom as a kid. I think I was 4 years old or so, so in the middle of everything exploding. And right there is a very old little drawing of a teddy bear that I made, I don't know, may have been 8 or something, and I've kept it. But what do you do with all that stuff, right? It's awful the way your house just becomes completely overgrown with stuff. And so I just put some of that stuff in here, and I put in photograph of a flower, and another drawing of a bit of a landscape. I'm trying to show it so there's no glare, with stickers over the top like that, because I thought that was fun to do that way, see? So, and another bit of a drawing that I kind of liked, and it's got metallic ink in it, and so on and so forth, you see? So it's a really great way of getting stuff all nicely packed together, and it's pretty. I have about, I don't know how many there are, 30 or so booklets like this with different colors paper, and I wrote my poems in there by hand with pen and ink, because that's something I enjoy. I can show you some of that. Let's have a bit of that over here. What those pages look like here. Just a random one. See? It doesn't matter whether it's really neat or anything. It's all in Dutch, because I chose at some point. I used to write in English as well. If you can call it poetry, just expressing my thoughts and imagery. Lots and loads of imagery. Truckloads of semi or 100% fantasized, stuff. At some point, I decided when I got into the completion process, going into that meant at some point that I had to decide to write in Dutch, in my native language. And there's a huge difference there. As I've said before, there's quite a bit of a cultural difference between the Dutch language and the English language. And using English, to me, I have studied it. I've gone to university in Amsterdam for 7 years. I spent there studying English and reading English literature and all that. And so I have some of the quite a decent helping of the knowledge of the language. I know how the language works to a rather decent extent, I think, but it's not the same. And because I had lived in foreign countries before, in France and in Spain and in Switzerland, I have grown up with lots of different foreign languages around me and in me. I've spoken them. I have spoken French for a decent part of my life. So that makes it, for me, it makes it quite a big decision to write the things that really matter to me, things that hurt, to write that in Dutch only, in my parents' language, really. My native language, when I have not had, growing up, that much contact with the Dutch culture at all, which is probably a good thing, because that way I'm way freer. I can say whatever I like, really. And I don't think, I haven't thought up until YouTube I haven't thought at all about publishing any of this, or I might look at that some other time. But I didn't do it for that. I didn't write in order to publish, just like I don't do these chats on the tube in order to get a direct result out of it, in order to get comments, or in order to get likes, or in order to get subscriptions. I love it when that happens, but it'll have to come as a result of what it is that I'm actually doing, you know. And if what I am doing develops and grows into something that people can actually use or make sense of for their in their own you know, in their way of seeing things, then that's fine. That's great. Maybe you will like me. That's or you will like what I say, or you will like the type of things that I talk about, and that's what I hope to you know, more and more to go towards. So there's a great difference there. You tend to view things as a consumer, right? So you think, I have to publish this stuff because then it becomes a book and then it's real. But this is very real to me, and it is very real to you whenever you do something like this, whenever you make something for somebody else, or you write something for yourself. Or there's a huge gap between that which is private and real in that sense, and that which is public and which is real in that sense. And the gap is there for a reason. I think it's rather important. So I'm a happy camper. I sent off the booklet with the photographs of me growing up and meeting my husband and a couple more things like that, and a bit of landscape and a couple of stickers, and just, you know, pretty unproblematic, I think. I tried to address slightly, you know, in a moderate fashion, the things that have separated us, and that I'm sorry for what it's worth. I am sorry, you know, what can I say? And it's gone. I have added like a little, I suppose it's a postcard with a picture of, you know, pretty, somebody else drew that. And so I've written a note to go with the booklet and all that. And I think it's bloody perfect. Well, nothing is perfect, but this I think they will like it. And they are musicians. They used to do loads of, they were way more into the music world, and that's how they met my dad, as far as I know. My dad played the clarinet and the saxophone, and he worked in the place where they met up, and where I was in the foster home as well, is where all the radio stations are. And there's also a or there used to be, I don't know what it's like nowadays, but there used to be a radio philharmonic orchestra, and I seem to recall the father of the family that I stayed with played the oboe. So the oboe and the clarinet are really very much alike, I think, to me at least. I know they're different, and I probably can tell which is which. I seem to recall that the clarinet has got this type of bass, and the oboe is straight downward at the bottom end. So as far as I know, that's it. But my grandfather on my father's side used to play the violin, and he wasn't a gypsy. He was a. I mean, he descended from circus people, which I didn't know anything about. But they weren't musicians. They were. They did acts with horses in the circus, and you know, the tightrope acts, and magic tricks and all that stuff. But that was in the 19th century, so that's quite a long while ago. But there are I like 6 or 7 generations that I've found of people who were circus artists in there. So it has explained to me, once I found that out, I was like, that explains why I am so fond of gypsy music, why I can stand traveling around Europe for years on end without going completely bonkers, and a couple of other things, right? So, but that's a separate part of our history, really. My grandfather used to play the violin in a philharmonic orchestra, they played you know, classical music concerts and that stuff. And I'm personally, I suppose if I have to think about classical music, which I don't really do nowadays, because, I kind of grew up with Mozart and that, a bit the gentler kind of classical music, and I just find it's beautiful, but it's very old fashioned and predictable to me. And even though it's quite, Johann Sebastian Bach it's very beautiful, it's complex, it's really gorgeous to listen to, but I just don't take the time anymore. And it's very rare that I get to listen to any of that type of music, especially live, played live. That's a different story, of course. That would be quite something, but that's something we've never been able to afford. Simply to go to a concert, to listen to that kind of stuff being played live on any type of level of quality. You'd have to go to the BBC on television, and then you would, you can enjoy some of that. And I do that maybe once a year or so. And the rest of the time, I listen. What do I listen to? I listen to a lot of, Tibetan bells, Tibetan monks chanting, the ambient, modern type, a bit on the gentle side of the psychedelic music and psy dub and that type of stuff. I like that very much. Carbon-based life forms, excellent. If you don't know carbon-based life forms, go and look for them, because now stop this thing and just go to find them, because they're really gorgeous. There's one of them that's called one. Upload of theirs from a record I suppose they made a couple of years ago, that's called Interloper, and I play that 3 times a week, and I have done so for the past year and a half at least, every single time. And each time I listen to it, each time I play it in the background, like it's playing while I am doing something else, and it's just such a support, such a fabulous, like I don't really. I have one way is to enjoy the way it's really quiet in my house, which is great. I mean, isn't it great to have a quiet home? Yes, it is. But after a couple of hours, it just gets very boring, right? And you have to engage with something again. And especially when, like me, you're home alone a lot, and you're doing stuff and you're making stuff and you're fiddling around with cards and with beads and whatever, it's nice to have a bit of music in with that. So those are types of music that I listen to very regularly. What I also liked and sort of rediscovered recently is East European type music, folk music, really, like Romanian folk music, for example, I really like. And there must be some sort of there's a reason why I, tend to choose that type of music. There's a fly buzzing around, so that's why I go like this now and again. The fly is interested in being, preferably right here somewhere. Because they're always like that, right? He's just being a general nuisance. Anyway. So these people, the foster family that I stayed with, right, they were musicians. They tried to teach me the piano, to play on the piano, but I had no motivation whatsoever to do any of it. I just found it very difficult to, live up to what I felt to be expectations of things. And of course like they've said in the messages, like my let's call her my cousin. She's not a cousin, but not by bloodline, but it feels more like a cousin than some of the cousins that I actually have. She was so kind and so friendly. It was really gorgeous to read those messages. And she just explained that they have been, also very busy with music and orchestras and youth orchestras they've been involved with in France also, and all that's pretty extraordinary. And I suppose they were ambitious people to some extent. They knew what they wanted, and they they could get it, right? They managed to work together with people very well for very long stretches of time, which is something neither of my parents ever could. And it's those things are in my backpack. There, I have this big backpack of troubles and worries and being, generally incapable of lots of things that you need to have or do or be able to do in to be connected to people and to be involved in being human in general. And so I'm hoping that all this kind of all this personal stuff kind of comes to fruition in my YouTube channel in some time in the future. At some point it'll be more and more easy for me to talk about less dramatic things and to look at things a bit more from a distance. I was so tired, you guys, from worrying my head off at what I was supposed to say to them, which is the worst thing you can do, right? You just shouldn't, you just follow your guts. You follow, and at some point I had made the booklet. It was all complete, it was done, it was pretty, I was completely pleased with it. And in the evening, or as I was laying in bed, I just went, yeah, I'm not so sure I want to send it. I'm not sure I want to let go, because there were a couple of photographs that I found that I wanted her to have, but I don't have any copies. So I was getting a bit, cancer type-ish with that, to just cling back onto, identify with whatever is on those photos. And it was making me miserable again. So I decided, you made this for them. What do you want? Do you want to hang on to this and make yourself miserable, or you just want to release it? And of course, the idea, once I had the idea of that I had a choice, it made me feel much better. And so it went, and it was expensive because I had to buy big envelope with plasticky bibbles in the side, and a big expensive stamp, so it's insured. And it will probably get there tomorrow or the day after, which gives me a bellyache again. It's so emotional. It's been 44 years, and it turns out that I can actually relate to those people. And the moment that I will see them, which I probably will next year in early August, my husband suggested stopping by at their place on a holiday trip. We were going to see the Alps anyway, so it's more or less, just a bit of a detour. That's fine. And I will be completely over the moon. And why else? It's my life, right? I am entitled to having, but it's so funny to reclaim, and it's a lot of work. And most of the work I have to put in is to convince myself that it is okay what I'm doing. That takes kilojoules out of me, which I find very funny. Anyway, I'm going to upload this now, and then I'm going to have a little think, because now that all this is out of the way, maybe we can talk about, something slightly less all over. So see you very soon anyhow. And thank you for watching this, you guys.